Good afternoon and welcome back to Tactics Board. It's a big one for Norwich City this weekend, an even bigger one for David Wagner as he tries to rescue a job that many already feel he's on the way to losing. It feels a bit more like a matter of when rather than if he loses his job as the club's head coach at present, but he does have the opportunity to turn things around against Blackburn Rovers, who they face at Carrow Road on Sunday. Blackburn have lost their last two games, although one of them was against Chelsea and one of them was against Swansea, who have picked up a lot of form since beating Norwich at the Swansea.com stadium. So definitely a difficult task on the horizon for the Canaries, and it doesn't look good for Wagner. But I'm going to take a look at the 11 I expect him to choose for the game and how I expect it to play out tactically. Admittedly, he is going to have to pull off a masterclass to get a win from this game, but that's what he'll be aiming to do. And with no further ado, this is the 11 I think he'll choose to do it for him. So I've gone for George Long in goal, Kellen Fisher at right back, Danny Bart and Ben Gibson at centre back, Dimitris Yannoulis at left back, Gabriel Sara and Kenny McLean in the centre of midfield, with Onel Hernandez on the right, Yujo Huang in a sort of number 10 advanced striker position, Jonathan Rowe on the left and Adam Eder up front. To take that from the back, I don't think Long had his best game against Sunderland. He did make some fairly routine saves, but his distribution wasn't great. There was a lot of smashing Long with a lack of ideas. Admittedly, that might have been part of Wagner's plan, which was even more smash and grab than we've seen from him at times this season. But I think he's done enough to obviously stay between the sticks. Norwich are expected to call back Vicente Reyes from his time at Braintree Town on loan, but that shouldn't trouble Long and his place in goal. Of course, Angus Gunn not expected to be back until the other side of this month's international break. So Long is secure in that position. He can do better than he did against Sunderland. But overall, I think for a second goalkeeper, he's been pretty good for Norwich. And then at right back, I've got Kellen Fisher to retain his position. I think especially against the backdrop of the team he was part of, he did very well against Sunderland. Admittedly, struggled against Jack Clarke at times, who looked very dangerous and is, by all accounts, one of the best players in the Championship. So a bit of a difficult task he was handed. I don't think defensively he really shone as much as he has at times. At the start of the game, he looked quite nervous, but he certainly settled after that fantastic assist for Hwang Ui-jo's opening goal. So I think he's done enough to stay in the team. Jack Stacey wasn't especially good before Fisher came into the team, and that's why Wagner gave him a chance. So I expect him to be given another chance against Blackburn, and I certainly think he deserves it. Speaking of somebody who deserves a chance, I've gone with Danny Bart at centre-back, probably more through hope than expectation, because Shane Duffy and Ben Gibson haven't been dropped yet this season despite a series of poor performances. Duffy had an absolute shocker at the Stadium of Light, of course, liable for two of those goals, and two of those were sort of his mistakes. First of all, deflecting a shot past Long that probably he had a decent chance with, and then losing the ball before Kenny McLean fouled Jack Clarke for the game-sealing penalty. So plenty of errors in that game, and admittedly him and Ben Gibson could both be dropped after their performances at times this season, but Gibson is much more important to Norwich's build-up. He's also the only left-footed centre-back Norwich have, and he's the best player at passing out from the defence. So I think just for his role in that aspect, he's probably the one that's likely to retain his position if Bart does come into it. And it feels like it's now or never for him, really, because he did only sign a year-long contract when he signed for the club. I wrote in a piece actually yesterday that he's already 20% of the way through his contract. So it looks like a Norwich City career that's quickly spiralling into bad signing territory. So he needs to turn it around as quickly as possible. Whether Wagner gives him the chance, it probably dictates that in a big way. And I've just gambled that he's going to do it this time because he made some significant changes for the Sunderland trip. And after what Shane Duffy did, I don't think you can set the precedent that those sorts of performances are okay or that they're good enough to sustain your place in the team, because that doesn't set a positive culture and it's not good in the long run. So I've got Bart in there, as I said, probably more through hope than expectation. And at left back, I've got Dimitris Yannoulis, who was very poor in the northeast, but not really much alternative. There was that strange situation where Sam McCallum came from being outside the matchday squad to starting against Coventry, playing quite well, and then dropping straight out of the matchday squad again. So I'm not really sure where he stands in Wagner's thinking. He's another one who's out of contract in the summer, so that will be an interesting one to follow. But it doesn't look like he's providing much competition for Yannoulis at the moment, and I'd expect him to start at left back. In centre midfield, I've got Kenny McLean and Gabriel Sara, and I'm writing a piece at the moment actually about their weaknesses and why the tactical weakness in midfield is underpinning all the problems that Norwich have, and exposing that defence to the sorts of poor performances that they've put in recent weeks. But Adam Forshaw wasn't good enough at Sunderland, and Norwich don't have many other options. Jakob Sorensen doesn't look like somebody Wagner wants to include in the squad just yet, obviously still coming back from injury, and the German has tended to be very, very cautious with players coming back from long-term issues. He hasn't played yet this season, so not many options for Wagner to play with. And just because I don't think Forshaw did enough to start again, he of course got hooked at half-time, so when you can't have him in the mix, I'd expect to see Sara and McLean in midfield, especially at home when Norwich are probably going to be more inclined to attack than they were at Sunderland. On the right, I've gone for Ono Hernandez because Christian Fastnack didn't do enough again against Sunderland. Another poor performance, blazed one left-footed shot over the bar. He did make quite a clever run to open up the space for Fishers to cut back for Hwang for the goal, but didn't make many other contributions, hit the post with a header that arguably he should have done better with, and he's just completely fell off. So I don't expect to see him start, and out of the options available, Wagner seems to favour Hernandez, so that's why I've got him in there. Looks fairly dangerous without really doing much against Sunderland, so I've got him in there on the right wing. On the left, I've got Jonathan Rowe, probably the first name on the team sheet at the moment, and the only person who hasn't let the club or the team down really in recent weeks. And then I've got Hwang behind Ida. Because of that midfield reshuffle, you have to obviously drop a midfielder out of that advanced role, and I'd expect to see Hwang and Ida in there. Ida hasn't really done much wrong, but you can't also drop Hwang after scoring his first goal for the club last Saturday. So that's the team I expect Wagner to choose, and I'm just going to speak briefly about Blackburn and some of the threats that they provide Norwich with, and it is quite a sort of fearful one really, because their strength comes in central midfield and they're two attacking players in that area. The striker Tyrese Dolan isn't really your typical goal-scoring number 9. He does occupy those positions, but he's more of a clever mover, a good technical player. He's only scored once in the Championship this season, but what he does is create space for Joe Rankin-Costello and Sammy Smodics in that advanced midfield role. Smodics has already scored 7 times this season. He's been a big part of Blackburn's revival in recent weeks, as has Rankin-Costello, and the pinning back that Dolan does creates space for them on the edge of the area. Then you add into the mix the lack of defensive protection that McLean and Sara provide, and I think it could be a really, really worrying one for that Norwich. Blackburn like to dominate possession. They like to have most of the ball throughout the game, and they'll look to slowly attack and progress the ball through the thirds, which at the start of the season looked like it would be Norwich's dream situation, but Sunderland were just absolutely comfortable against them. The pressing seems to have gone out of the window. Wagner seems to have abandoned that sort of high energy, intense style of play, and I think they could just almost lay down and allow Blackburn to attack them, which would be absolutely not the best way to go about it, especially, as I said, with that weakness in midfield against Smodics and Rankin-Costello, who have been 2 of those key players. So that's definitely one to watch out for. I do think it's going to be a very difficult task for David Wagner, number 1, to get a good result out of this game, and number 2, to change fan perception and get his role as Norwich City head coach back on track. Definitely a difficult one facing him on Sunday, potentially quite a toxic atmosphere, but we'll have every kit covered at pinkun.com and on the Pinkun Plus app. So go to pinkun.com/subscribe for all of our content, plenty of subscriber exclusive columns, some really good videos will be on this YouTube channel, obviously in the lead up to the game and afterwards as well, and you can keep up to date with all the twists and turns of the football club. So keep your eyes on our content, pinkun.com, and I'll see you here again soon.